to our peer revision website, Community of Writers. I'm Jessica DeCola.
And I'm Jennifer Del Nero.
And we are the creators of this website. We just created this video in order just to give you some tips on peer revision and tell you a little bit of why we set this site up. On another note, we have a tutorial that we've posted on our first blog entry on this blog, so that will give you the ins and outs of how to use this blog and where to find everything, more technical points. So please make sure to check that out as well.
And we want to start by just giving you a brief definition of revision and really distinguishing it from editing. Oftentimes the terms are used interchangeably, but actually they're quite different. Editing really refers to the surface changes that you'll make at the end of a draft, fixing the spelling, the punctuation, maybe adding and deleting a word or changing vocabulary. And that's really, even though that's important, that's really not what our site's aim is. It's really on the creative revising of your piece collaboratively with your peers. So some of the things you want to think about in terms of this creative re-envisioning of your piece is and when you're reading your peer's piece is, does the thesis statement carry through the entire paper? Is there enough sensory detail in the places where it's really necessary to convey certain key moments? Do we need to shift paragraphs around? Do we need to delete a paragraph? Does the title capture the essence of the piece? These are the types of creative revision questions that sometimes as writers ourselves, it's really hard. We might think that we're expressing what we want to express, but often it takes another pair of eyes to really notice something about our piece that maybe we didn't. And that's really at the heart of what we created this site to do, is to really use each other and help one another in terms of having the most beneficial revision experience.
Okay. And so just a few tips on getting the revision process started. First, when you read the piece that you're going to be providing some feedback on, and we will provide some more details on how that's going to work in class and on the website in other places. You want to first, read through the piece twice at least. The first time, just to read it through, just as any other reader would be, just to get a big picture in terms of what you think the reader's doing and to get an overall feel for the piece. The second time you want to go through, and third time you read it more with an eye of for revision. Some of the things that really you really like, you really think work, and some of the places where you want to make suggestions. You want to make sure you start your critique with a positive comment. So definitely one or two at least positive comments. That way, it's always anxiety producing, as I said, so you want to ease the person in and start with the good things so that they feel, and then follow with suggestions, always making sure they're constructive suggestions that are really helpful, not just critical.
Yeah, and be sure that you're striking a balance between your positive comments and your criticisms, and make sure that you're always being sincere, and always think about if you were this writer, what kind of feedback would be most meaningful to you, and really use that as the way to sort of approach your comments. And certainly if the writer happens to ask you to look at something in particular, I'm really, some of us struggle with writing introductions or with coming up with topic sentences, and so certainly if the writer has requested that you look at something specifically, try to pay even a bit more attention to that area. And just to keep in mind that writing is very subjective, and that's what makes it a really beautiful, creative, and oftentimes challenging process. But the great thing about it is that we don't all have to necessarily agree on what makes a piece great. So certainly the writer at the end of the day has the decision to either, or can make the decision to accept the feedback or to politely reject it. That is within the power of the author to make those decisions.
Right. So I just want to reiterate, one thing is just to make sure your feedback's specific. Again, we'll give some more guidelines on that. But just really, if you have either a suggestion or you want to praise something, sort of general, this was great, or this wasn't so good, isn't really helpful on either end. So you want to make sure you say, If you thought the piece was great, even if you have no suggestions, this is particularly what I liked. I liked, even as specific as the use of this word in this sentence, or I liked the way, the few lines where you describe your grandfather, I can really picture him there. Or, in the suggestion, I'm not sure what you meant by this phrase, or in this place I felt like I wanted a little more detail about what you were talking about, or a little more suggestion. So being very specific about that will be helpful. And so overall, we hope you feel comfortable here, connect with your fellow peers, and enjoy yourself and enjoy your writing. Happy writing.
Happy writing. Enjoy. Thank you for listening to us.